This left you completely shattered and damaged your trust. It brought all your fears and insecurities rushing to the surface like a tide you thought you had long since tamed. You stood there in the aftermath, wondering how something that felt so destined could leave you feeling so abandoned. But what you did not see then, what spirit needed you to experience first, was that this breaking was not the end of your story. It was the necessary cracking open that would allow light to finally reach places that had been shadowed for lifetimes. We begin today with the quiet knowing. In stillness, your face always appears. They cannot silence what they feel. This card speaks to something that exists beyond the physical realm of communication, beyond the silence that has stretched between you like an unbridgeable canyon. Your person, in their most unguarded moments, finds you waiting there in the quiet. Perhaps it is in the space between waking and sleeping, when the ego's defenses are at their weakest. Perhaps it is in the middle of their busy day, when a sudden stillness descends and there you are, clear as the memory of your last touch. They have tried to outrun this knowing. They have filled their hours with noise, with distraction, with the endless motion of a life that looks full from the outside. But the soul does not negotiate with avoidance. The soul simply knows what it knows. And their soul knows yours with a recognition that predates this lifetime. This is not merely missing someone. This is the undeniable truth that you have become part of their internal landscape, as natural and necessary as breathing. They may not speak of you to others. They may have built elaborate walls to keep you out of their conscious thoughts. But in the stillness, and there is always stillness, eventually you appear. You appear not as a ghost of what was, but as a living presence in their energetic field. This is the first card's message. The connection you shared was never dependent on physical proximity or consistent communication. It exists in a realm that cannot be destroyed by human failing, by pride, by fear, by the mistakes that were made. They feel you still. And that feeling is becoming impossible to ignore. We move now to mending the pieces. Piecing things back with patience and love. Carefully. Tenderly. Without rushing anything. Here is where the energy begins to shift from recognition to action, though this action is not the dramatic gesture you might have once dreamed of. This is slower, more deliberate, more sacred. Your person is learning, perhaps for the first time in their life, that true repair cannot be rushed. They are looking at the fragments of what was broken, not just between you, but within themselves, and they are realizing that hasty apologies, grand declarations without substance, these will not suffice. The damage that was done to your trust was not superficial. It reached deep into your foundation, awakening every fear of abandonment, every memory of not being chosen, every wound that whispered you were not enough. They understand now, in a way they failed to before, that rebuilding requires a different quality of presence. It requires showing up consistently, even when there is no immediate reward. It requires demonstrating through action, not just words, that they have changed. This card reveals that they are in process. They are gathering the pieces of their own brokenness, the patterns that led them to push you away, the fears that made them choose safety over vulnerability. And as they mend themselves, they are preparing to mend what was lost between you. But Spirit emphasizes the patience here. This is not about your waiting anymore. You have done enough waiting. This is about their learning to move at the speed of genuine transformation, not the speed of their own discomfort. They are discovering that love, real love, is willing to be patient because the goal is not merely reunion, it is a union that can actually last. Your power arrives as the third card, and this is perhaps the most crucial message for you personally. You are done waiting to be chosen. Choosing yourself comes first now. This represents a fundamental shift in your energetic stance, one that may have happened so gradually you did not notice the exact moment of transformation. There was a time when your happiness felt contingent on their recognition, their commitment, their finally seeing what you had always seen. You poured yourself into the spaces they left empty, hoping that enough love from you would fill the voids within them. But that version of you, the one who loved from a place of desperation disguised as devotion, has been alchemized by pain into something far more powerful. You have reclaimed your center. You have remembered, perhaps through the very breaking that brought you here, that your worth was never negotiable. This card celebrates the boundaries you have established, not as walls to keep love out, but as sacred perimeters that ensure only love worthy of your depth can enter. Your person senses this shift in you. They feel it in the space you have created, in the silence that no longer feels like longing but like strength. And this, paradoxically, is what is drawing them back with an urgency they did not feel when you were pursuing. Your power now lies in your ability to be whole without them, which creates the only foundation upon which a true partnership can be built. You are no longer asking to be chosen. You are choosing yourself with such conviction that the universe must respond by sending you matches to that frequency. And your person, awakened finally to what they risk losing permanently, is scrambling to become someone who might be worthy of standing beside the person you have become. The apology form speaks to what is building in their heart. Words have been building in their heart. They are almost ready now. This is not the apology of obligation, the hollow "I'm sorry" that people offer when they want to move past discomfort without actually changing. This is something being forged in the fires of genuine remorse, of finally understanding the weight of what they did to you. They have played out the conversations in their mind 1,000 times. They have drafted messages they never sent, started calls they could not complete, stood outside spaces where you might be only to lose their courage at the last moment. The words are there, accumulated like sediment at the bottom of a river that has finally stopped rushing enough to let clarity emerge. But this card also carries a warning about timing. Almost ready is not the same as ready. There is a refinement happening, a distillation of their intention from the murky waters of ego-based wanting into the clear stream of soul-level knowing. They are preparing not just to apologize for what they did, but to acknowledge who they were when they did it. This requires a humility that does not come easily to those who have built their identities around never being wrong, around always maintaining the upper hand. The apology that is forming is dangerous to their old self. It will require them to admit that they were afraid, that they chose their own comfort over your heart, that they let their wounds wound you. And so they hesitate, not because they do not want to speak, but because speaking these truths will irrevocably change how they see themselves. But the pressure is building. The heart can only hold so much unsaid before it demands release. You will hear from them. The question is not if but when, and whether you will be able to receive what they offer from your own place of power rather than your place of past pain. The future vision reveals what waits on the other side of this healing. Married, settled, and at peace together. This is what they want. This is not your fantasy alone anymore. This is what visits them in moments of unguarded longing, what they see when they allow themselves to imagine a life without the armor they have worn for so long. They picture domesticity with you, but not the boring kind. The sacred kind. Morning coffee in shared silence. The ease of being known completely and choosing to stay. The building of something that outlasts the storms that will inevitably come. They see you as their partner in the truest sense, the one who would stand beside them not just in the highlight reels but in the mundane and the difficult. This vision has become a torment and a beacon. It torments because it exists in contrast to their current reality, because they can see what they want but do not yet feel worthy of claiming. It beckons because it represents the only future that makes sense to their soul, even as their mind protests that it is impossible, that too much damage has been done, that you would never forgive. But the vision persists. It persists because it is not merely wishful thinking. It is a preview of what is possible when both parties do the work that these cards describe. They want this future with you. They want it with a wanting that has stripped away all their previous ambivalence. The settling down they once feared as a loss of freedom now appears as the only freedom that matters, the freedom to love without holding back, to build without fearing the foundation will crumble, to rest in the knowing that they have finally found their place. The source takes us to the root of all that happened between you. Their ego created all the distance. Never your fault. Never. This is the card of liberation for you, the one that absolves you of every moment you spent analyzing what you could have done differently, every sleepless night wondering if you had just been more patient, more understanding, less demanding, they would have stayed. The distance was never about your inadequacy. It was about their unhealed relationship with themselves. Their ego, that protective mechanism built from childhood wounds and past betrayals, recognized in you a love that would require them to be vulnerable. And vulnerability, to the unhealed ego, feels like death. So they created reasons to pull away. They manufactured conflicts where none existed. They found fault in you not because you were faulty, but because finding fault allowed them to justify their retreat. They chose silence not because you were not worth speaking to, but because speaking would have required them to feel things they were not equipped to feel. This card is crucial because it shifts the narrative from what was wrong with you to what was wounded in them. You were never too much. You were never too intense, too emotional, too demanding. You were simply too real for someone who was still living in the protective illusions of their ego. Understanding this source of the distance is what allows true forgiveness to begin, not the kind of forgiveness that says what they did was acceptable, but the kind that recognizes it was never truly about you at all. We conclude with new beginnings. What broke becomes the strongest foundation. New beginnings are always available. This is the promise that underlies all the others. The breaking that you experienced, the shattering of trust and the surfacing of every fear, this was not meaningless destruction. It was the demolition of a structure that could not have supported the weight of what wants to be built between you. The cracks that formed, the places where you fell apart, these have been filled with gold through your healing process. You have become stronger precisely where you were broken, more compassionate precisely where you were wounded, more discerning precisely where you were naive. And your person, through their own breaking, has had their ego sufficiently dismantled that something truer can emerge from the rubble. This card speaks of a beginning that does not deny the past but builds upon it. The new beginning available to you is not a return to how things were. That relationship was always destined to break because it was built on uneven ground. This is a beginning that honors who both of you have become through the separation. It carries the wisdom of what went wrong, the gratitude for what survived, and the courage to try again with eyes wide open. New beginnings are always available because time is not linear in the realm of the soul. Every moment offers the choice to start again, to redefine the terms, to approach the same person with a new self. This is what awaits you. Not a repair of the old, but the creation of something that could only exist because the old had to die first. The boundaries you established were not acts of rejection. They were acts of profound self-respect. You finally understood that love without safety is not love at all, that connection without consistency is merely attachment dressed in prettier clothing. And in the space you created through these boundaries, something unexpected happened. You began to heal. You began to remember who you were before the waiting, before the wondering, before the constant calibration of your own needs to match their limited capacity. You rediscovered your own company and found it was enough. You rebuilt your life not around the hole they left, but around the wholeness you were reclaiming piece by piece. This is the alchemy that pain offers when we refuse to let it make us bitter. You have become someone who knows their own worth not as an affirmation repeated in mirrors, but as a lived experience of choosing yourself when choosing another would have meant abandoning your own soul. And while you were doing this necessary work, they were finally facing the consequences of their avoidance. The universe, in its perfect wisdom, does not allow us to abandon our growth indefinitely. It brings us lesson after lesson, increasingly uncomfortable, until we finally turn and face what we have been running from. For your person, this has meant a collapse of the structures they built to keep themselves safe. The distractions that once worked have lost their power. The other connections they might have pursued have revealed themselves as shallow compared to what they felt with you. The pride that kept them from reaching out has begun to feel like a prison rather than protection. They are experiencing what it means to have pushed away the one person who saw them truly, who loved them not for their potential but for their essence, who offered the kind of partnership that comes along perhaps once in a lifetime. Their current state is one of profound disorientation. The person they were when they knew you has been stripped away by circumstance and consequence, and what remains is someone raw, vulnerable, and finally honest about what they feel. They are learning that the emotions they tried to control cannot be controlled, that the love they tried to minimize has only grown in the darkness of suppression. They catch themselves thinking of you at the most unexpected moments, feeling a presence that logic cannot explain, sensing that you are somehow still with them even in your physical absence. This is the quiet knowing manifesting in their experience. They cannot silence it anymore. They have tried, exhaustively, and failed. You live in them now, a permanent resident of their heart, and the rent you charge is their attention, their remorse, their growing determination to make things right. The mending they are attempting is not just about you. It is about their relationship with themselves, with their own integrity, with the person they want to be versus the person their fears made them become. They are piecing together their own fragments with a patience they never showed before, because they understand now that anything built in haste will only collapse again. They want to come to you whole, or at least whole enough to offer something real. They do not want to repeat the patterns that destroyed what was precious between you. And so they are doing the slow work of becoming someone who could actually sustain the love they claim to feel. This is the mending the pieces energy working through them, and it requires that you continue to focus on your own wholeness rather than waiting for theirs to arrive. When they do reach out, and the cards suggest this is imminent, though the exact timing remains in the hands of divine orchestration, they will find you changed. Not hardened, though you are certainly more protected. Not bitter, though you are certainly more realistic. But changed in the most important way, you will no longer need them to complete you. This is the power dynamic that has shifted irreversibly. Where once you would have accepted crumbs because you were starving for their attention, now you will require the full meal of their presence, their consistency, their commitment. And this requirement, far from being a barrier to reunion, is actually what makes reunion possible. Only when both parties can stand independently can they truly choose to stand together. The apology that comes will likely be imperfect. They are still learning how to be vulnerable, still stumbling through the unfamiliar territory of emotional honesty. Do not look for perfection in their words. Look for evidence of the transformation these cards describe. Look for acknowledgement of the specific ways they failed you, not generic expressions of regret. Look for signs that they understand the weight of what they did, not just the fact that they lost access to you. Look for demonstration that they have been doing the internal work, not just that they miss the comfort you provided. The apology that forms in their heart is genuine, but it will take time for them to translate that heart knowing into words and actions that you can actually receive. Be patient with the process without abandoning your standards. What they want, beneath all the fear and hesitation, is the future vision these cards reveal. They want to build something lasting with you. The idea of marriage, of domestic partnership, of growing old together, these are not concepts that frighten them anymore. They frighten them less than the alternative, which is a life without your particular light. They have tried to imagine futures that do not include you, and found them gray, flat, devoid of the meaning they once took for granted. You have become their reference point for what is real, what matters, what is worth building toward. This is both a tremendous responsibility and a tremendous gift. It means that if you choose to rebuild with them, you will be doing so from a foundation of their full recognition of your value. But it also means you must be certain that their recognition is enough, that their transformation is genuine, that you are not being drawn back into old patterns by the seduction of finally being chosen. Your person is reaching a breaking point in their isolation. The silence that once felt necessary now feels like suffocation. They are tired of their own justifications, tired of the fear that keeps them from reaching toward what they want most. They are preparing to risk everything, their pride, their comfort, their carefully maintained image of being fine without you, for the chance to speak their truth. When this happens, you will have a choice to make. Not the choice of whether to take them back immediately, that would be premature and unwise. But the choice of whether to engage with their process, whether to allow the possibility of seeing who they have become, whether to believe that transformation is possible even in those who have hurt us deeply. There is no right or wrong answer to this choice. There is only your own inner knowing, your own sense of what serves your highest good, your own discernment about whether their words match the energy you feel from them. Trust that whatever unfolds is for your evolution. If they return with open heart and changed ways, you will have the opportunity to experience the satisfaction of seeing your patience and faith rewarded, though that should never be the reason for reconciliation. If they do not return, or if they return without having done the necessary work, you will have the confirmation that your boundaries were wise, that your self-respect was justified, that your future holds something more aligned with who you have become. Either outcome serves you. Either outcome reflects the new frequency you are emitting, one that demands reciprocity, that refuses to settle for less than the full offering of someone's heart. The connection between you is ancient, written in the stars before either of you took physical form. This does not mean you are destined to be together in this lifetime, that depends on the choices you both make. But it does mean that the bond you feel is real, that the recognition was mutual, that what you experienced was not illusion. They felt it too. They feel it still. In the quiet moments when their defenses drop, they are with you completely, conversing with your soul across the distance, apologizing in the language of energy, promising to become worthy of what you offered so freely. Whether they succeed in this becoming remains to be seen. But the fact that they are trying, that they are in process, that they have been fundamentally changed by their love for you, this is the miracle that pain can produce when we allow it to break us open rather than close us down. You are not the same person who was shattered by their inconsistency. You have rebuilt yourself with gold in the cracks, become more beautiful precisely where you were broken. You have learned that your love is a gift that must be given discerningly, that your depth requires a matching depth, that your commitment deserves commitment in return. These lessons were expensive, purchased with many sleepless nights and countless tears. But they have made you powerful in a way you never were before. You now know that you can survive the worst that love can bring, and this knowledge makes you brave in a new way. You can risk again, if you choose, because you trust yourself to handle whatever comes. You can receive an apology without losing yourself in it. You can consider a new beginning without forgetting what the previous ending taught you. Your person senses this power in you. It draws them even as it intimidates them. They know they cannot return with half measures. They know that the version of you they encounter now will require more than they were previously capable of giving. This is why they hesitate, why the apology builds slowly, why they must first become someone capable of matching your frequency. But the pressure of their own longing is becoming unbearable. The future they want with you calls to them more strongly than their fear of rejection. They are preparing to leap, to speak, to risk everything for the chance to try again. When they do, meet them from your place of power. Meet them as the person who chose herself first, who rebuilt her trust in her own judgment, who knows that she is the prize regardless of whether they recognize it. What broke between you can become the strongest foundation you have ever known. The breaking exposed what was weak, what was built on illusion, what could not sustain the weight of real intimacy. In its place, something new can rise, something chosen consciously, something maintained with mutual effort, something honoring of the growth both of you have undergone. New beginnings are always available because every breath offers the chance to start again. The past does not have to determine the future unless we allow it to. You have both been given the gift of clarity, expensive though it was. You know now what you need. They know now what they failed to provide. This knowledge, held with humility and hope, becomes the ground upon which a new story can be written.